Thanks, Ceann Corla, and I sympathise, Minister, because, like you, there's so many pension investigations going on. I'm not really sure what you think this question is about or what my office thinks it's about, but in my head it covers kind of two things. One is a progress report on the investigation you had sought from the Pensions Authority into the Aer Lingus second supplementary pension scheme, but also it could potentially address the review of the annuity matter that we discussed in a topical issue some time ago.
2 minutes.
To answer the Deputy, the scheme trustees and the duties have the responsibility under trust law, under the relevant legislation under the Pensions Act 1990 as amended, and the duties of the pension scheme trustees include administering the trust in accordance with the laws and the terms of the trustee deeds and rules. I had previously confirmed that the matter relating to the particular scheme that we spoke about recently has been raised by my department with the Pensions Authority, and the Authority have informed me that an examination of the scheme is actively being pursued, and the Pensions Authority will assist if there has been a breach in the legal obligations and take any necessary action if the breach is found. The only thing I am not in a position to tell you is when, and I know that's probably frustrating, but I don't have, in fairness, they're doing us a good deed, and so it isn't within my gift to kind of tell you to jizzy it up, you know what I mean? So I think they will be back, obviously, as quickly as they can. And I think that's just it. Oh, actually, sorry, I beg your pardon. The other issue, and I know it isn't reflected in the question, I know you have some amendments down. I spoke to your colleague yesterday evening here when we were talking about the social welfare bill. I know they'll be ruled out of order on this bill, but I actually don't think they're for that social welfare bill. I think they're for the social welfare and pensions bill. So can I ask you to put them down again to the social welfare and pensions bill, if you wouldn't mind?
Daly's first supplementary.
Thanks, Minister. And I suppose the reassurance that staff and members of the scheme want is to know that the investigation is still being actively pursued, but there would be a worry in terms of a time delay. If I could remind the House, we were dealing with a situation where we had a second supplementary pension scheme with 100 million in it, sitting there for 2 years, belonging to people who retired in the meantime, other people who had a right to access those benefits, but it was sitting there being bled by management charges, payments and so on, basically hemorrhaging out of the fees. So the big concern for staff is that after pushing for the assets to be distributed for a period of almost 2 years, finally getting the most appalling distribution mechanism that anyone could ever have thought of, having to put a block on that, and now to have that investigation, the danger is that that may lead to the monies not being distributed for a further period in time. So if I could ask that we keep the pressure on, which is probably the reason for this question, is that we all keep our focus, because there's a lot of people who have a lot of entitlements there who have been treated quite shabbily on it.
You know the reason we made the request was at your request. I'm very happy to have done it. When we saw this PQ come in this week, we made contact with the Authority again, who gave us the assurances that it is actively being pursued. But I hope you appreciate that I'm not in a position to give you a date, but we will keep in contact with regard to this issue to make sure that it is finalised.
And on the broader things which also link into this scheme and the matter of the wind-up and annuities being purchased for pensioners. This morning a joint life annuity allowing for a 1.5% inflation per year will cost €37 for every €1 of pension. And we did discuss here last week the need to seriously address that and review that aspect area. I believe there's a public consultation or something, or some form of consultation that you're going to initiate on that. Again, that's incredibly urgent, given the number of pensioners now who need to access funds, who are being essentially bled dry on that, and whose schemes are being bled of money because so much money has to go to the annuity purchases, and really the only winners in that are the big companies and so on. It is to the detriment of others while reducing benefits in the scheme. So we need an urgent review of all aspects. It is applicable to this scheme, but a lot of that is linked to the so-called minimum funding standard and liabilities being calculated on annuity prices. So this is quite urgent, and we need to progress that also.
Just to say, I think you know I agree with you, right? So the Pensions Act 1990 is the one that needs to be amended, but also the Tax and Consolidation Act allows you then to have the flexible options, and actually that's the place that what you and I are talking about needs to be reflected upon. I have written to the Minister to ask him to reflect, and when we launch the public consultation on pension reform, I think that's probably a time where we could sit down and determine exactly what's in the best interest of people that you and I are representing, to make sure that we make the changes that reflect what they actually want and what they need.
By Deputy Moynihan.